There was the burger that I eat,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's the cow. And those are two very different things.
We're making parts of being sustainable part of everything that we do.
And the kids are eating all of this.
But I do think that kids can handle it.
I want to go to farm camp. Okay, Jenny, thanks so much for joining. It's great to have you on as the first guest of Coffee and Climate. Before we kick things off, are you drinking anything today?
I am. I've got a sweet and spicy tea from Good Earth.
Ooh.
It's my favorite.
Yummy. A nice little warm up to the afternoon.
It is. Yeah.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
So you've been in farming for almost 10 years now?
Yeah.
So how did you get started in the farming world?
So I started out WOOFing, which is Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms. And so I did that for about 2 years, did a year and a half on a goat farm in Arizona. And then I went back and did it in 2019 for 6 months in Hawaii. It was great.
What is that experience like?
It can be really hard, but it's also really rewarding. I learned so much. I learned about myself. I learned about food systems and small farms, and then just like so many little skills.
And what does the experience entail? I mean, I've heard a little bit about woofing. Are you on the farm? You're living on the farm?
Yeah.
You're getting paid? I mean, what is... No. It's an immersive experience. It's immersive, unpaid experience.
Exactly. Yeah. So essentially you contact them through the WOOF website, and you set up expectations. Usually they'll have a little like interview with you to make sure that you're actually interested in working and that you're interested in what they're doing. Yeah. So you are living in their home with them.
Wow.
It's great. Yeah, they provide you food. I've had experiences where I'll work at the farmers markets with them, and then they'll give you a bit of the money from that.
And now you're at farm camp.
Now I'm at farm camp.
And what brought you there?
So it's just the perfect marriage between my love of working with kids, wanting to, spread knowledge and community, and then my experience farming.
What's the experience like?
It is my favorite place in the entire world.
Understandable.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
It's so beautiful. I think for me, it's the sense of community and the sense of purpose that I have with it. I feel very connected to the mission and the things that we're doing there. And that makes my job really enjoyable. And, even the moments where it's not easy, it feels worth it.
So farm camp, for people who don't know, is a stunning property near the coast. And I've been to the area, and how many places in the world do you get California coast plus redwoods, and also without the traffic that like Big Sur in Southern California gets? I mean, I truly think that NorCal is underrated. But what's the philosophy behind farm camp? Why did it get started there? Yeah. How did it get started? Tell me more.
Yeah, so it was started in 1952 by Abe and Eve Crittenden. And I actually didn't know all of this, so it's kind of cool. I guess after World War II, they started seeing the world pretty differently, which is understandable. They were living on the East Coast working as a teacher and then a youth worker. Like Abe was a teacher, Eve was a youth worker. And they wanted to give kids the opportunity to share in community, learn skills, and they moved to the farm. I guess with the banker that they were buying the property with, like in consultation, he was like, this property is not going to make it when it comes to farms. And they were like, well, our main crop will be campers.
And then what is the typical day at farm camp?
So every day you wake up to the sound of the bell and you get to go off and do chores for an hour.
Get to.
Yeah. It's amazing.
What an opportunity.
Yeah. So that could be anything from chopping wood to provide us, warm showers, or collecting the eggs from the chickens. Then we'll do a family style breakfast. So you have assigned seating. We love that part. It really builds connections between campers who otherwise wouldn't necessarily talk to each other.
Yeah.
And then morning singing while we do the dishes and finish breakfast. One thing I love about farm camp is the fact that it's a choose your own adventure. So all of our activities are free choice. So you could be making friendship bracelets or doing Gaelic football or goat yoga or go on an all-day hike. And we will also, if campers come and they're like, we really want to play Dungeons and Dragons, true story, we'll make it into an activity. So, and now it's something that we do every summer. And we have our showers, which is a great opportunity to talk about water conservation with campers. So we try and keep it very, very quick. Then dinner, and then an evening program of some kind. So we'll have like a talent show at the all camp campfire or do barn dances. Yeah.
I want to go to farm camp. Is there adult farm camp?
No, there should be.
So I guess what animals, what grows there, like when you speak about the chores, like what all does that entail?
It's a long list, so just get ready. We've got chickens, goats, puppies, kittens, cows, pigs, horses, sheep, and donkeys. And then in the garden, we have kale, lettuce, squash, zucchini, all kinds of berries, peas, tomatoes, and then fruit trees.
Oh my gosh. And the kids are eating all of this stuff for dinner. Well, I guess except for the horses and the donkeys.
Right. And puppies.
And puppies. What is that experience like? I mean, I just know from me growing up, there was the burger that I eat, and then there's the cow. And those are two very different things in my brain. What is that like for kids to be so close to that experience? And then what are the parents' reactions too?
Yeah. It can be a mixed bag of reactions. We've got some campers who get upset about it. And what's nice is that they're in a place where we can talk about it and take the time to sit with them in those emotions. If they want to try out being a vegetarian, camp is an awesome place to do it. But then it's also, we get the opportunity to talk about how loved these animals are at farm camp and how their interaction and the love that campers bring to the animals makes it such a high quality existence for them. And they can get behind that. They're like, oh, okay, you're right. We have some people who are vegetarian in their daily lives. And then when they get to camp, they actually do eat the meat because they know it's well cared for.
Yeah. So kids are already thinking through these things. I mean, it's amazing to me to think that a kid would be vegetarian at home and then think through how loved they are at camp and change their practices. What kind of climate and environmental conversations are you having at camp? And what are these kids already coming to camp with knowledge of?
It feels like climate change is such just a fact, right? And most of our campers are from California. It feels like it's so relevant with the drought that's ongoing, wildfires and the threat of wildfires that are consistently there. So they are certainly thinking about climate change. And I think it can be a really scary thing. We don't necessarily, we are pretty real with them where we're like, look, there is a fire going at camp, right? Like we have our campfire. And so what can we do to be safe? How do we know when a fire is out? Fully out, and you can walk away and feel good about that. How can we conserve water? Well, we call them teacup showers. And so it's, use the amount of water that would fill up a teacup. So that's turning off the water you get wet, turn the water off, put on your shampoo, turn the water back on, rinse it off. So it's a very we're having these conversations and they are so on board with it. When they get home, oftentimes it's a little hard to break those habits. So I find myself taking teacup showers when I get back from camp just because it's been what I've been doing, you know?
I mean, I feel like that's net positive.
Yeah.
So,
I think too, like we're making parts of being sustainable and that awareness just a part of everything that we do. So it does become a habit. It's also a more joyous experience because we're doing it together.
What are some of the like the farming takeaways that these kids, I guess, take with them?
A lot of campers go home wanting to start a garden, even if it's just, you know, on your porch having one tomato plant. That I think they all would take home a horse if they could, but that's not. It's a little harder to get behind.
I also wanted a horse at that age.
Right? I think though too, they learn that it's not easy to have to care for something other than yourself all the time, you know? And I think there's a certain appreciation that goes with that, and knowing that you can do hard things and we can make good choices that benefit other people and not just ourselves.
Yeah. I actually want to go back because I think the reactions from the kids is so interesting with eating the meat that's there. And this is just something that I find particularly interesting. But parents, I guess, willingly send them knowing that that's a dynamic. Do you ever come across parents who are nervous about that, or how do you handle their reactions?
We've certainly had parents who are not very happy that their, you know, child came home saying they eat the animals, and you know they're freaked out. But also when we choose to eat meat, we're eating an animals. Like I feel like they do deserve to know that, right?
Part of it.
And I think it often comes up because we do a lot of gratitude with, you know, if we had pork chops for dinner, we'll say thank you so much to the pigs from last year and the people who were on that chore for providing us such a beautiful meal. And that's, you know, wait, what? This was a pig? Yeah. So I think, you know, having gratitude and acknowledging where your food is coming from is important.
What kind of practices do you use at camp in terms of the farming? Is there anything worth noting there?
So, not an organic farm, but try to keep the practices natural and sustainable as much as possible. All the cows are grass fed, and we use very people and animal safe products and practices. Yeah.
I've heard that getting the certification for organic is challenging. So I feel like there's so many farms who are not technically certified organic, but use primarily organic practices.
It can be really cost restrictive to become an organic farm, and you have to recertify every year. So it can be really hard.
So with your experience in both WOOFing and as a director of farm camp, has your perspective on farming or food systems evolved over the years?
One thing that I hadn't realized was that there are farms everywhere. Every community is going to have a farm somewhere nearby. I think a lot of us don't know it. A lot of people are, you know, working very quietly in what they do. And it would be awesome if we could really embrace our farmers and try and, you know, make contact with them. They're a huge part of community. And it's also been interesting to learn that grocery stores in particular, like the bigger grocery stores, cannot just like go to their local farm whose whatever it is, like lettuce, let's say, and sell it at their store. Instead, they would have to like ship it off somewhere just to have it come back. So it makes it really hard. So it's kind of more on us as consumers to figure it out. And that can be hard and time consuming.
But it's worth it in the long run.
It's absolutely worth it.
I think that's one of the beautiful things that I was thinking of with farm camp is that, you know, there's no fossil fuels involved really in the like production and getting it on the plate. And there's just it's truly farm to table in its like purest form.
Yeah.
And getting to give kids that experience is such an awesome kind of like jumpstart into what the ideal food world is. And we've become so distant from where our food comes from. And yeah, I think shout out to farmers markets who it's like, that's the closest thing that so many of us living in cities can really get to actually, connect with the farmers that, we're sourcing from.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't have access to farm camp or is an adult who is most of the people watching this, what are some small ways that people watching can build the same connection with food at home?
Well, you mentioned farmers markets, but that was going to be my number one thing, because that's where you can, like you said, like we get to have conversations. And even if we don't buy something because it's expensive, right? Like we can hear about what they're doing and figure out if we can support them in what they're doing. I feel like a lot of farms have and need volunteers, even if it's just for like certain days to come weed the green beans or whatever. And I also think figuring out who is around you, if possible, trying to, if you can source things like eggs locally, like if they're expensive at the supermarket, they're usually even less expensive when you go with someone local. So, and they're probably better. And then I also think just connecting with your local businesses in general, because they know people in the community, and being vocal about what you care about helps you build those connections.
Yeah, I did not have this here for this purpose, but I used my little basil plant last night. The recipe was horrendous. But yeah, I'm like, I really want to start like growing things too. And then,
there should
no,
be
go for it.
seed banks in most communities. It's just a matter of finding them. So I also think that like if we can spread wildflowers around and help with the bees, I have my bird feeder out. Like there are just little everyday practices that I think can be helpful for the whole planet.
Yeah, everything is all connected.
Yeah.
What type of advice would you give parents who also may not have access to something like farm camp, but want to instill this kind of food awareness in kids?
I think just having the conversation, I think it can be hard, but I do think that kids can handle it. And the more in touch that they can be, the more autonomy they're going to have in decision making as they grow up. I think sometimes that parents can be scared to have the conversation because ultimately, like, I don't want to go vegetarian. And if my child does that, we have to cook distinct meals. But I feel like they should be allowed to have the option to know,
What would you say is a misconception about farming or food systems that you wish you could change?
I think, and this, of course, comes from a place of privilege in some ways, right? The misconception I'm thinking of is that farming and food that is grown locally is too expensive. But realistically, like there are people behind every food choice that we make. And when we, have relationships with them, or we just recognize that they are human beings who are creating the food that you're eating, then I feel like food probably isn't expensive enough. And well loved and taken care of food and the people behind it is absolutely worth every expense that there is. It doesn't seem like many farmers and farms themselves are, trying to squeeze every penny out of everyone. They're just trying to, essentially, from what I've seen, all of that money gets put right back into the farm.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining. And I can't wait to plant more things and chat with the people at the farmer's market instead of just buying my eggs and running off. Yeah, you brought up some really great ideas that I can't wait to bring into practice.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.